get rich quick? Well, the Megyn Kelly method might be right for you. Yes, if you follow step by step Megyn Kelly's uh, version of journalism, then you might be on your way to more views, more money, and most importantly, more likes on Twitter than Ben Shapiro could ever dream of. Yeah, we are in part, who knows how many of, and hopefully the last one of our Megyn Kelly series. Uh, I hope it's the last one, but I can't guarantee that. I don't make the rules here. But yeah, Megyn Kelly really is going down a very clear path. She's just asking questions along that path, but she is asking specific ones, and she's asking them of specific people. The most recent person is Aaron Mate. You might know the name, you might know the last name because his dad is more famous than him. They are both uh, anti-Semitic Jews of the left. This guy is especially, I think, probably worse, but I'm not 100% sure. We're gonna try to figure it out. Probably not succeed in that, but we will at least go through some of what they said yesterday when Megyn Kelly interviewed him, and wow, it's special. Welcome to the reality show. I'm Razi Ginsburg, joined by Marco, Richard, and Jonathan. Let's go to some uh, initial thoughts, in part because of all the Megyn Kelly episodes we've done so far, it's only been James and myself. So, Jonathan, I know you grew up on Megyn Kelly. What are your thoughts on her current system and method of success?
Well, maybe I'm the wrong person. I've until this show never heard of this woman, so I have no track record of this Miss Kelly. She strikes me as another one of these American podcasts from the vein of Cadmus and what's the name of the Tucker? Uh, isn't she just one of those?
No, I mean she was mainstream news. When the first show we did on her a few weeks ago, not the first one, but the first in the current series, I started by saying she used to be one of the best journalists in the US, and I believed that until recently. I remember watching Fox News as I described in that episode. Fox News was nowhere near as bad as it is now. It wasn't great, but it was better, and she was the best on that channel. But
Oh,
yeah,
it sounds
this
like Tucker.
what?
It sounds the same as Tucker, same
No, Tucker
story.
was never good. Tucker was never good, and
He
she
was
was
better, wasn't he? He was
no,
like the
no,
libertarian guy that,
no.
no?
He was bow tie guy in CNN in like a bad version of wrestling, promos show where he was the right wing and there was a left wing, and then he came to Fox and said stuff that even Fox's advertisers were like, "What the hell is this stuff?" And they pulled out. Tucker was never good, and that's the thing. Candace was also never good. The problem is some people actually took them seriously, but with Megyn Kelly, you could be forgiven, and maybe I'm biased because I took her seriously, but you can be forgiven for taking her seriously because she seemed like a serious journalist. And when she left Fox, she went to NBC, which also kind of you think, okay, somebody who can find their way into a right-wing news channel and a left-wing news channel, there's something there to be respected. But the thing is, she's just very, very good at bullshitting and very good at appearing to be a legitimate journalist, which now her podcast clearly indicates otherwise. Richard.
Yeah. Well, my first encounter with Megyn Kelly was on the Rubin Report in the early 2020s. He used to appear quite often when he'd interview her, and of course, so that was when they were talking about lockdowns and the like. And of course, so that they were obviously both on the same page as I am in terms of lockdowns, talking about what a terrible thing they were for personal liberty and all that kind of thing. So this is one of the features of how you encounter these people, isn't it? You encounter them on a particular issue, which you agree with them, and you sort of mentally file them away as that's a person in the right box. But then, unless you see them on a wider range of topics and you understand the extent to which they've integrated their thinking across, a wider range of issues, then you don't actually know whether they're any good or not, whether they're on the right side of reason or not. And that's certainly been the case with Megyn Kelly. Yeah, but I mean, Razi, I think you said at the end of the Daily Objective that you'd something. I may be misquoting here, but you'd rather take heroin than talk about Megyn Kelly. But here we are talking about Megyn Kelly, and I don't quite know why.
Can I just clarify? I have no intention of taking heroin, but I will unfortunately talk about Megyn Kelly when we have to. Marco.
Yeah, like this episode wasn't bad enough talking about Megyn Kelly. It's taking a very bad turn. I mean, yeah, she's bad, and watch the previous episode when people talked about her. But this particular interview is quite hilarious because she's got a guy from a podcast called Useful Idiots. Now, I don't know this Mate guy whether he's useful, but he's definitely an idiot. Are we going to go through some of the videos because the stuff he says is just legendary, and the continuous equivocation between a dictatorship and a legitimate country is taken to beautiful extremes, and it's just enjoyable to see how two people with the combined brain of a chicken seems to make an episode out of it and get likes, which is an endowment of internet. How it doesn't matter what's behind your eyes, you can still make a living out of it.
Nate says in the chat, Megyn Kelly is more of an actress than a journalist. I like it when we agree. I also like it when we disagree. So we were still gonna do that drug episode at some point. But yes, yeah, she is very much a definition of grifter. And let's again keep in mind that most of her career was as a right-wing newspaper person on Fox, with a little break as a left-wing pro-trans kids person on NBC, and then transition to podcaster where she does her own thing, and her own thing really is scarier than the other people's things that she was doing before. Let's start listening to her interview with Aaron Mate.
So outline broad brush for us, if you will, why you object to what the United States did in Venezuela on Saturday morning.
Megyn, thanks for having me, and I appreciate you being open to a dissenting perspective on this. It's important we have debate. And in fairness to Fox News, it wasn't just Fox News that is cheerleading this. You could see so many major news networks cheering this on, CBS News and NBC. So this truly, which underscores that this is even though this is Trump's policy, it is bipartisan. There's been a regime change campaign going on in Venezuela by the U.S. for a very, very long time, which everybody in power has supported. And it's important to raise questions and to, challenge the assumptions that have been made to justify this campaign. The reason why I object to this is, first of all, I don't think we have the right to regime change foreign countries. We don't accept foreign countries interfering in the U.S. If we believe in the rule of law, international law, states being equal, states having rights, we don't have the right to go and overthrow a foreign government just because we don't like them. And in Venezuela,
Let's pause. I was gonna say let's pause and see how she responds to that. But wow, I mean, if we're gonna respect the rule of law, then we have to respect dictators who there is no rule of law in dictatorships. There's the rule of the dictator. And we don't want countries invading us. I mean, what kind of an argument is that? That kind of moral equivalence only comes from people who actually side with the worst people in the world and the worst regimes in the world. Jonathan.
Yeah, absolutely, Razi. It's despicable. Dictatorial entities have no rights because the very existence is a negation of the very concept of rights. That's just a contradiction. They don't have any rights themselves. Therefore, we can do, or the US rather, can do whatever they want in Venezuela, whether it's regime change or take stuff from there. This is not a legitimate entity, especially given their history with the US and what happened with their oil company. There has been an explicit theft of American property from Venezuela with the oil industry and I think with other companies. So by all means, the US has a right to protect its property But regardless, it's up for grabs. That should be something that discourages people from becoming dictators. Actually, it will be a really nice mechanism if every time a dictatorial entity rises, all the nations around it will be able to do whatever they want to it. Wouldn't that be like a nice mechanism to prevent or dissuade people from becoming dictators? It'll always end very bad for them. Actually, I think that should be a new international law. What do you guys think?
Well, so I think, look, there's arguments, and we've made them on this channel, why this operation is concerning and why it could be, not a good thing, and why it could be an indication of worse things to come. It could also be an indication of better things to come. But none of these arguments are made by this guy. Like everything he says is completely invalid in his argument, and we're going to hear more of him. So we'll get to that. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. I should say this is another side point. When we hear too much of a clip from somebody like that, there's so much that he throws in there that we could miss stuff. And Bonnie points out, she says, I saw CBS at 3:30 that morning. I didn't see them as, quote, cheering it on, at least at that point. Yeah, when I heard that, I thought NBC doesn't sound like something they were going to do. I don't think he needs to actually provide any evidence for Megyn Kelly's crowd to believe him. Richard.
Yeah, for sure. And again, sometimes the immediate reaction anyway to these things is not what the reaction is when people start getting together and talking about it among each other, particularly those who are pragmatists and those who like to take their principles from someone else, particularly when it comes to the left, who particularly like to be on message with that kind of thing. I noticed, for example, this guy was a big supporter of Corbyn, for example, in the UK, and thought Corbyn was been delegitimized by some of the anti-Semitism claims about Corbyn. But of course, Corbyn had a whole bunch of principles which this guy clearly supported, anti-Semitism being one of those principles. And I think he revealed a lot through that, of course. But that's just one example. If we focus on Venezuela, the Venezuelans tried to instigate their own regime change at the ballot box in July 2024. And when Edmundo Gonzalez is supposed to have won by like 2/3 of the vote, but of course Maduro claimed victory with 51%, and in what is recognized as an illegitimate election. So he is absolutely not the legitimate leader of Venezuela for sure. There's plenty of evidence to support that claim. That doesn't mean that the US or any other Western nation is compelled to go in and adjust matters. Of course not. But when you come to defend him as the legitimate leader in the way that Aaron Mate is doing, I think you're on the wrong side of things for sure. And then, of course, look at how he's packaging this whole thing together when he's talking about the principles involved. I notice how this argument is always made. We shouldn't want to change governments just because we don't like them. Now, that always makes it so broad that, I don't like President Macron, I don't like Keir Starmer, but I recognise they're the legitimately elected leaders of their respective countries, and that no country would have the right to change the regime by force. So, but of course, that's always broadly brushed across as if it's just general animosity, a dislike for their personality, their stature, their clothing, their attitude, the previous things they said on Twitter, as opposed to their actual where they stand as principled people or not, and how they behave in terms of individual rights to their own citizens, which is the crucial factor.
Honestly, this guy is a despicable piece of human being. He was head of the Palestinians contingent in a university. He was cheering for them. He was even invited, I think, at the UN or somewhere like that, to talk by the Russian delegation. So imagine what kind of piece of crap of a human this is. He's never seen a dictator of a nasty, negative, evil cause he's never been on board with. So he's coming from that kind of point of view, and you can also recognize the hallmark of people like him. Have you noticed how he made a point? Oh, I'm not pro-Trump, but I'm not against it. I'm not pro-democrat but are not against them. He talks about the bipartisanship of this illegal act, i.e. putting himself outside the system and pretending he has an objective view of things. Well, no, this guy is a piece of crap. He's a proper. I mean, just look at the argument he makes. He talks about international law and the rule of law like they were even remotely similar concepts. Well, international law is something that doesn't exist. It's a series of treaties and stuff that it's often used by people like him who want to legitimize whatever stupid things they say. While the rule of law is a principle that civilized people accept, by which they follow the rules, and the rules are applied in the same way to every single citizen, which is not what people like him who want to do. And also this kind of statement, if we believe in state being equal, well, that's exactly your point. States are not equal. A dictatorship is not a democracy. A dictatorship like Venezuela has got nothing to do with a state like the United States, where individual rights are protected, where the courts are still functioning to a certain extent, where people are largely free. This is a dictatorship. A dictator is somebody who enslaves their own people and steal the money off them. I mean, later on they will make a couple of arguments. I can't believe that a functioning brain actually can make these disconnected things and believe that it's actually an argument. I mean, these two people, as I said, together, they amount to a chicken's brain.
Well, don't blame Megyn. She's just asking the questions. But yeah, let's listen to the rest of his answer and if Megyn challenged him on it.
Why we've been doing it. I mean, Trump's, to his credit, has been very clear about this. It's for their oil. He said that on Saturday that we're going to take their oil under the so-called Donroe Doctrine. And I don't grant any state the right to do that. It's also going to have serious human consequences. As you mentioned earlier, people were already killed in this attack, which hasn't gotten very much coverage, but dozens of people at least were killed, including civilians inside Venezuela. And if this regime change campaign escalates, many more will be fated to die, including possibly, as you mentioned, U.S. soldiers who will be forced to go in and finish the job. But this has been going on for a very, very long time. A brief history, Venezuela first faced a U.S.-backed regime change campaign back in the early 2000s when the Bush administration supported the ouster of Hugo Chavez, tried to install someone who tried to cancel the Constitution. That was reversed by a popular uprising and loyalist military members, but the campaign has continued ever since. And it's been pursued in recent years with sanctions that have had devastating consequences to Venezuela, which then is subsequently used as a pretext to justify regime change. So, for example, there have been many migrants coming from Venezuela. And then if you listen to Marco Rubio, he says, this is one of the reasons why we have to intervene, because we have to stop this migration crisis. Well, what doesn't get mentioned by Marco Rubio and most media accounts of this is that the sanctions we imposed on Venezuela knowingly caused migration. Thomas Shannon, who served under Trump in his first term at the State Department, he warned at the time that, in his words, the sanctions were going to grind the Venezuelan economy into dust and have huge human consequences, one of which would be out-migration. And that's predictable. When you target a country's economy with crippling sanctions, especially Venezuela's oil industry, which accounts for most of its revenue, you're going to cause economic misery. A lot of people fled that as a result. So then we take the migrants and the fact that they're fleeing, and we use that as a pretext to go and overthrow the government when it's the regime change effort to begin with that has caused this. So look, legally, I don't think we have the right to. And in terms of consequences, I just think this is a disaster for everybody, because as we've seen, regime change campaigns abroad have spillover effects everywhere, including inside the US.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. There was a lot in there. I'm gonna pick up on one point. You guys can pick up on whatever point you want to, but one thing he said was, first of all, he said this was obviously about their oil. Trump said so. Well, Trump mentioned it in his again, if it was about oil, I would be less ambivalent about this. But this was not the reason. This is not the official reason. It's something that Trump mentioned, and he mentioned in a way that sounded great, but unfortunately, I don't think is his actual policy. But this guy says about taking their oil. I don't grant any state the right to do that. Well, you grant every state the right to do that. That's what you were saying, that because Venezuelan government did not discover oil and figure out what to do with it. It was private companies, and your buddies nationalized those private companies and nationalized the oil production and took it away from the private companies. So, yeah, you do grant states the right to do that. What you don't grant uh, is individuals the right to their own property and to the product of their own mind. And if Trump was actually doing what he said in that press conference, uh, then he would be giving people back their property. And of course, communists don't like the idea of private property, which is why this guy doesn't like it. Jonathan.
It is profoundly dishonest because he's raising the effects of these sanctions. He's talking about the crippling sanctions that have been imposed on Venezuela since the early 2000s, I think, with the Chavez dictatorship, the socialist dictatorship from when it began. Um, and he's saying that that was bad, but he's ignoring why there were sanctions imposed on them. And that's a dishonest part. There is a reason why all of this happened in Venezuela. There's a bit of a causal chain. He's completely ignoring that, and he's criticizing America, and I guess the West more broadly about the situation in Venezuela, while completely not mentioning what Venezuela had to do with bringing itself into this situation. The number one reason is they elected, and then I think I don't have the full. I know the full history of Venezuela, so it's not my subject expertise matter. But this dictator they elected, Chavez, then imposed real socialism, right? He nationalized industries. He stole millions and millions of dollars in assets, maybe billions. And therefore, to protect their interests and to try to make life harder for this thief, they imposed as sanctions, as a legitimate action, and frankly, too weak of an action of self-defense. But that doesn't enter his chain of thought. It's actually quite similar to the people accusing Israel of genocide and people accusing Israel of the damage in Gaza while completely ignoring October 7th.
And the 2 years since when the Palestinians chose to continue to fight. But yeah, it's always fascinating to hear somebody talk about an advocate of socialism, talking about a failed socialist country and saying the reason that they're failing isn't socialism, but it's sanctions from capitalists. It's capitalists refusing to trade with the socialists. That is why the socialism is failing. It's socialism. Shouldn't America be crippled by the fact that they have some capitalistic policies and the socialists won't trade with them? It's very confusing, but of course, he's not going to be challenged on that point either. Richard.
Yeah, he takes the premise, the starting point, that the US or the West are the colonial bad guys who are meddling in a foreign country with the audacity of imposing sanctions. And that's his starting point, and therefore, it's a direct parallel with how people approach Israel and Gaza in the way that they treat. It didn't start on October the 7th. Arguments adopt the same premise. But of course, yeah, it is exactly as Jonas had said. It's reversing cause and effect, or at least not accounting for all of the causes which were prevalent. And of course, I noticed. I mentioned earlier the support that this guy Aaron Mate has for the likes of Jeremy Corbyn, and of course they all support each other and they all support Venezuela. Jeremy Corbyn was a big fan of Venezuela. Ken Livingstone, the former mayor ahead of him, was a big fan of Chavez, and they were both fans of Chavismo. Despite all of its problems, they were always downplaying the authoritarianism of it, the economic collapse of it, the hyperinflation of it, because the social goals that they saw, the goals of socialism, justified the absolute distress of its people and the crushing of its country and its resources. And of course, when it comes to nationalisation and the expropriation of the oil assets of the likes of ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips in Venezuela, that they were it's just expropriation, just a fancy word for theft. And it was the unilateral decision to cancel the contractual rights of those companies that they'd contractually agreed to, and to wipe them out, which essentially is what happened in the oil industry there, so that they could steal the oil from those private companies. So now I recognise that all of this is only one argument. The oil argument is only one of the arguments in the course of all this, and in the standard Trump way, it's a muddly mess, and you don't, there isn't a consistent message on what are the reasons behind things. But insofar as we're talking about that, then I think that is a legitimate reason for this to occur.
I mean, you already covered the main points here. The guy is a king in context dropping, really. He's so good at it. He ignores every single fact that are not really convenient to his cause. He's clearly a pro-Hamas guy. I mean, there's no doubt he would be. I mean, he was on the side of Palestinians, so there's no doubt they would be agreeing that the Palestinians are the victims, despite whatever they've done. And here again, to ignore the fact that the sanctions were imposed onto a communist government, a government which sees humans as slaves, and a government that is quite happy to dispose of human lives because they go against the will of the people, which, funny enough, coincides with theirs. I mean, the sanctions were imposed because they were enemy of civilization. But it's the sanctions' fault because the regime is falling apart. And Richard pointed out, it's not a coincidence that Ken Livingstone, the former mayor of London, did actually an oil deal with Chavez back in the early 2000s. He decided to help him by giving our money to the dictator in Venezuela in exchange for oil, because he was his friend, because they share the same political platform, because they love each other so much that they are quite happy to screw everybody's over, just in the extreme attempt to impose communism to everybody and spreading the slavery that they've been pushing for the last 80, 90 years. And I mean, the population escaped Venezuela because of the sanctions, not because they were escaping socialism. It's a bit what happens in Berlin. How many people from the West were crossing the wall in order to get to the East? Not many. The other direction, well, people risk their life to escape the socialist Russia and the death cult that socialism always comes with it. Honestly, these people, I wish they knew a bit more about history, and I wish they were a bit more honest. Their soul must be so rotten. I don't know how they sleep at night.
Yeah, thanks for the blast from the past with Ken Livingston. I almost forgot that he existed. Yeah, at
So
the
is he.
what?
So is he's got dementia now.
Well, at the further risk of being accused of being a Sadiq Khan supporter, and I absolutely think Sadiq is a major step down from Boris Johnson, his predecessor, who was also not that great. Ken Livingston was the worst mayor and the worst human being to be mayor in London's history. Yes, that is only three mayors, but still, that's I think even further. Actually, I'm not sure it's going to remain the case. We never know where London is going. Somebody in the chat mentioned Jonathan Aaron Mate is one of those people accusing Israel of everything you could possibly imagine and denying rapes of October 7th. And 937Q says Dave Smith has to be paid, paid to be a foreign agent, a foreign anti-USA government, basically paid to say what he's saying. I don't like those kinds of arguments in general, because some people truly are scum, even if they get paid to do that, and even if they don't. And he's successful in this niche of being a leading anti-Semitic Jew, whether or not it comes from whatever revenue he gets from YouTube or X or what have you. Somebody yesterday mentioned commented on one of our shows that they got an ad for Qatar. And I don't know if it was Qatar Airways or what exactly, but yeah, in a sense, now we're funded by Qatar. I guarantee you, you're not going to see a change in our approach to Qatar, no matter how much of that Qatari money we get. And like the socialists say, we will say this to Qatar, we're going to spend that money better than you will, so it's better in our hands. Okay, let's watch more of the video.
You know, the one thing I keep thinking about is um, before we got Gaddafi in Libya, and that place just turned into a hellhole, we were having sort of proxy fights with Libya. I mean, they weren't really proxy; it was kind of on the nose, but they were conducting certain terrorist operations against us, and then we conducted certain or certain military operations against Libya, and it all culminated in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland, by Libya. And that was one of my first introductions to international terrorism as a young woman, because I was starting at Syracuse University in 1988. And it happened that there were 35 Syracuse University students on board Pan Am 103. They had been studying abroad in London and were on their way home. And that flight had been targeted by Libya for terrorist activity back at a time when we weren't requiring bags to be identified with their passenger. You could put one on in one city and it would be transferred if the plane had a layover, without any question that the person who owned the bag is no longer flying on board the plane. And that's how they managed to bomb this flight that brought down hundreds of Americans, killed hundreds of Americans, including 35 students at my own university where I just started. And it was something that I was remembered. I mean, we were there every 4 years. There would be the memorials. They were sort of young people, 18, 19-year-old people with their whole lives in front of them. My point is simply, you start these actions and you think, great, okay, like back at the time, they had attacked us. There had been terrorism by Libya. So of course we bombed them. Okay, great. Yes, go America. Again, put on your cheerleader uniform. They deserved it. Good for us. And now, you look at those parents of the 35 Syracuse University students, I'm sure they're not feeling so great about it. So it's
All
just,
right,
that's just
let's
one example,
pause
Aaron.
here. Okay, so all the crap he said that we had been talking about up until now in the show, she didn't challenge him on a single point. She does beautifully demonstrate, by the way, how if you keep going to what is considered the right, eventually you talk exactly like any leftist. Yes, America is responsible for Lockerbie. That's what I got from there. Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong. Jonathan.
What was she talking about? I didn't understand that. That was not like. I'm sorry. What was she on about with the flight and Gaddafi? I couldn't follow
She's
that.
basically saying that the bombing over Lockerbie was America's fault because America intervened in places where it shouldn't, and that's why they bombed the plane.
That's just ridiculous. There's something so nostalgic about this episode, Razi. We've been talking against socialism. Like, wow, that's a long time since I've debated against socialism. Isn't that refreshing? Now we're talking about Gaddafi. Wow, that's quite nostalgic. I actually like that. It's better than talking about Gaza. Um, that's crazy what she said. It's not even coherent. The killing of Gaddafi, um, which was by Libyans. Libyans killed Gaddafi. It wasn't Americans who killed Gaddafi. It was his own people because he was a horrible dictator. And now Libya is in a worse state because it's a failed society. What does it have to do with America? Nothing makes sense. Completely incoherent.
Yeah, and Lockerbie was like what 20 years or close to that before, but America was, active in places where terrorists who vow to kill Americans are active.
That's schizophrenic. It doesn't make any sense. She should get checked.
Well, she's not saying anything new. She's just saying things that are new from her. Because we usually hear this, Richard, this is run-of-the-mill left-wing stuff. We hear this from the Ken Livingstons and the Jeremy Corbyns of this country all the time. Yeah. If we act militarily anywhere, we're at fault for killing people in any shithole country where we might intervene. if they kill us, we're at fault for them killing us, even though they say their whole culture, they love death more than we love life, and their only goal in life is to die, as martyrs by killing us. Richard.
Yeah, lefty apologists for terrorism is nothing new. It's been the case for decades, certainly all the decades that I've been alive. So I've certainly remember all of this going way back. And of course, you can point out many cases where even the argument doesn't stack up, does it? At what point did the US bomb Saudi Arabia and therefore lead to 9/11? Because I don't remember that happening. I mean, it's nonsense to switch this around like that. And of course, when she talks about the pride of the military, she's recognizing the fact that the skillful operation involved here, in the same way in the UK you'd have the skillful operation of the SAS rescuing people from the Iranian siege in London. But of course, she's just giving I don't want to walk on, don't want to criticize the patriotic support of the military. But then, of course, all she does is trash the entire ideals of the country in favor of letting a dictatorship live out his time as a dictator for years to come. And of course, under the mistaken premise that he and his henchmen and his supporters won't choose to bomb, kill, murder random civilians for their cause or a claimed cause at any point in the future, because what? Because dictators are such decent people who never do such things if left alone? Horse shit.
I mean, the shocking event here, she's actually admitting she went to university. How much of an endowment for education this is? You're better off if you got teenage children to let them get a proper job and learn from life rather than learning this kind of crap this woman have filled her empty head with. I mean, the fact that fighting terrorism and fighting dictatorship comes back to haunt us, it's like, really? Really? Because the world is better if you have a bunch of dictators that threaten you all the time, is it? I mean, these kind of people do not even have a principle, and certainly they don't know what it means to stick with a principle. And never mind the fact that all these dictators are as strong as we let them be. Just look at Iran. Right now, Iran is about to be the Papa Smurf over there is about to be toppled by his own people, who are fed up of being treated like slaves. These people, a couple of missiles from Israel destroyed them. Everybody were talking of Iran like they were the, oh my God, this great empire of evil we couldn't possibly touch. What did it take? What was it, 12 days for little Israel to destroy the whole thing? I mean, the assumption that you should leave bully people because, oh my God, they might slap me back. Well, if they slap you back, you hit them 50 times harder than you hit them in the first place. I mean, honestly, the lack of any sort of self-esteem, any sort of conviction from these people is just pathetic, and that's why they are, they're leftists, and that's why ultimately they are collectivists and people who believe in strength by hiding behind other people. That's why they love big governments. That's why they love big institutions where they can just disappear and let somebody else do the thinking. Absolutely despicable.
Yeah, Susie says she'll be extolling the virtues of Sharia in a few weeks. Yes, but she'll do it if she does it properly, like her friend taught her. She'll do it while occasionally saying, I'm not saying this is a good thing. I think that's the Tucker way of saying, advocating for the worst possible ideas in the world while occasionally saying he's not advocating for them. Yeah, we saw that with his episode about Qatar. We saw that with him talking about Hugo Chavez, and yeah, she is definitely not even going down that path. She is down that path, I think, with and way down it with this interview. Let's hear some more.
I just want to say, I'm still shocked that she came up with this incoherent story about Libya as a response to what he said about Venezuela. I just find it quite ridiculous. But yes,
Well,
go
she
on.
didn't come up with anything there. She's just using, there's a certain uh kind of what do you call it? Pattern, and she fits it in there, and it's this exists for every act of terrorism. Look, it didn't start on October 7th. Israel has been occupying blah blah blah. 9/11, there was the blowback theory on 9/11 as well. So yeah, these people will always, after every terrorist attack, I say these people, I mean normal, at least historically, the left will, and the far further away left than mainstream, will always say about a terrorist attack, somehow it's our fault. But yeah, now the so-called right is embracing it.
Where you just don't know what you're starting. And our mutual friend Glenn Greenwald has been pointing out that it's very normal for the cheerleading to happen after an action like this. There's like a froth that builds up amongst the media. We love our military. We're proud of our guys for, superbly executing such a difficult and dangerous mission. Of course we are. And we're proud of the United States of America for being able to do that in a way that probably no other country can. But that doesn't really answer the bigger question about how is this going to come back to haunt us? And not just us, but our kids, our children.
Yes, because it's people on the ground who have to pay the price of these decisions made from above. I mean, how many people lost their lives in Vietnam and so many other countless wars that were a disaster for everybody involved. And if you look at some of the reasons that we get, so another reason, a major one that the Trump administration claims is Maduro is a narco trafficker. I mean, Megyn, you have a legal background. I'd be curious your thoughts if you've on the indictment and the strength of it. I mean, I noticed that one of the counts that Maduro faces is possession of machine guns, which I don't understand. I mean, first of all, I don't understand why it's a big concern for the U.S. that Maduro has machine guns, and to me, it speaks to kind of this not being such a robust indictment. But he's accused of being a narco trafficker, and again, I don't think the evidence supports that. And it's also a harder case to make when Trump recently pardoned a convicted narco trafficker in the same court that indicted Maduro. And in the New York court, Juan Orlando Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, he was found to take a bribe from a cartel, $1 million. He was caught on tape vowing to stuff the drugs up the gringos' noses, quoting him. There was a prison murder tied to his case, and Trump pardoned him. So just as he's launching a regime change campaign, just as he's launching a regime change campaign in the name of fighting narco trafficking, he goes and convicts and pardons a convicted narco trafficker. So this strikes me as just yet, as we saw with Iraq, the pretext there.
Pretextual.
Yes. The pretext there was Iraq WMDs, which didn't exist. And I think we're following a very similar playbook here. At least Trump has the honesty, unlike
I don't disagree.
to say this is about oil.
I do.
Okay,
I totally
okay.
agree with you
Yeah, she always she's just asking questions, but she always also doesn't disagree. She kind of lost me at our mutual friend Glenn Greenwald. It took me a bit to recover from that, but yeah, there were a couple of things in there. First of all, yeah, this is a very, very bad argument for this action, the drug thing, and Daniel said on the Daily Objective he thinks Maduro might actually end up being acquitted and sent back, which might be the case. This is not the right reason, and there are reasons. Venezuela is definitely an enemy. This was not it. It's problematic. But yeah, Iraq, they love the Iraq War. And of course, Megyn Kelly sang a different tune back then, but now she is agreeing with him. Uh, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. We know that because they used them against their own people. When they did they not have those weapons is something we don't know. Remember, right now they're talking about Trump should have gone to Congress, therefore it's unconstitutional. If it's not a declaration of war, there's a question mark there. But Bush was threatening Iraq for 18 months. He went to whoever he had to go to, including to the UN Security Council twice. First, he got approval, but then he's like, maybe this is not enough approval. I'm going to go and beg, Papua New Guinea again to give me approval to do this. And by the way, the reason Bush went after Iraq and not Iran, a big part of it was because he really believed in, you have to have a coalition and all that crap. And it was easier to build a coalition against Saddam Hussein because he had already, used weapons of mass destruction against his own people, attacked Kuwait out of the blue, done all sorts of things and he was weaker than Iran. And there's more I have to say about that. But yeah, this is it's they're using all these historical examples, which by the way are the way we should use them is say, okay, if there is an actual legitimate national security reason to take military action, let's use that. Let's not say, okay, this is Operation Iraqi Freedom. Screw Iraqi freedom. They're not fighting for their own freedom. If we need to fight Iraq, it's not about their freedom, it's about our national security. Jonathan.
Look, all this ancient history that we go into this in this show is really fascinating. But I would like, and I don't know much about, I don't think I can comment on US law relating to war. But there's a phenomena that I find interesting that during times such as I think we've even seen it in COVID or during this war that people are starting to lose their mind, and they go into all sorts of bizarre conclusions. And we're seeing this phenomena with I presume, with this lady, but with other popular shows. And the reason is the philosophical void that is so prevalent in our Western civilization. We have no alternative to what is presented as the progressive approach, however you want to call this, woke, postmodernist, I don't know what the last name for it is. There is no objective answer to the subjectivist abyss, and people are resorting to religion or conspiracy theories or just self-hatred. Those are things they tend to cling on to. And that's just a broad phenomena of our culture. And this is the reason why it's so important that in this channel we are promoting for a objective philosophy, an alternative based on reality and reason, which is if they would have adhered more to, they wouldn't have come up to these bizarre conclusions about Gaddafi and the plane crash in Scotland or terrorists, whatever she was talking about there. That is something, there's a big hole. People have no purpose. They don't feel like they can reason. They don't see the causal link. They only see the effect without seeing the cause. Their thinking is broken. And what we can do, I think, in this channel at least, is to suggest that no, there is an alternative. You can know things. You can. There is logic. There is reason, and you should read the Ayn Rand. She writes about that. You should read the other good philosophy like Aristotelian philosophy or other stuff. So you can really have an alternative. That's, I think, the most important thing to say on this matter.
Well, Nate, after getting it wrong on drugs in the Daily Objective, is dropping truth bombs in the chat. By the way, truth bombs are also a violation of international law. He says the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were good. Trying to democratize them wasn't. Yes, absolutely. Bush was made fun of for that image of him with on the ship with the mission accomplished sign. Well, the mission was accomplished. Saddam Hussein was removed from power. The next mission, which was to make Iraq kind of like America, didn't work. A, because it is not their culture. They are savages by choice. And B, because America left aside, completely pretended that the real problem doesn't exist, which is Iran, and they let Iran take Iraq over. So, had Iraq been the third country the U.S. had gone into after 9/11, after, well, Afghanistan, let's leave that aside, but Iran and then Iraq, then yeah, Iraq would still look different from today. It would not be, anything that Bush imagined it to be, but it also wouldn't be a threat to America. And that's the job of America. That's the job of a country's military. Remove threats to your country. Richard.
Yeah. I think what these guys do is what they always do, isn't it? They've got wherever there's clarity, they throw dirt in the water and try and murk it over and make it muddy and unable to be separated out, one issue from another. So they take a bucket and they chuck in, they basically label it stuff I don't like and throw in the bucket assorted stuff they don't like. Trump is inconsistent in the bucket. Vietnam War was a mistake in the bucket. Weapons of mass destruction, intel reports aren't always 100% accurate. That goes in the bucket as well, together with toppling dictators. It doesn't amount to a coherent set of principles. It amounts just to stuff you don't like for a bunch of different reasons, some of which contradict each other, none of which you've thought about or integrated. All of it amounts to a load of slop in a bucket. And yet that's presented as a coherent argument. So it should be dismissed as such. Then, I mean, look at what Megyn Kelly says. She talks about we should stuff coming back to haunt us, which basically means we should only do what's easy right now, in case anything happens later on, which is bad. Short-term easy is her policy. How long that short-term easy lasts before it comes back to haunt us is, of course, not to be entertained as an issue or a question today. It's to be postponed to tomorrow, when you can decide who else to appease at that point.
I mean, the fact that we made mistakes in the past, it's true. There weren't weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, sorry. But does it really matter? I mean, wasn't Saddam Hussein a dictator anyway? And we have the moral right to remove any dictator that threatens our way of life or threatens our interest. They are dictators. They're not legitimate states. We're talking about people who enslave their own population, people who impoverish their own population, people who steal from their own population. Just look at Putin. He lives in fantastic palaces while the Russians are struggling to eat. And the same in China, the same in Venezuela. I mean, that's the essence of dictatorship. Is being anti-human beings, is enslaving people. So there's nothing wrong for a country like the United States taking out another dictator. Of course, it shouldn't be a crusade just for the sake of it. If nobody bothers you, you can afford to leave them alone. But the moment they get in your way, a dictator starts, threatening you, well, you take it out without thinking twice. And this fear about hunting as well, that if Israel took out Hamas decades ago, decades ago, we wouldn't have the problem of October the 7th, would we? But no, we always stick to altruism. We always allow them the benefit of the doubt, and we let the bullies and the evil parts to survive. And that's why they hunt us back, because they come back and do what they normally do, what they are designed to do: attack us, destroy us. Instead, if you go out without falling by the wayside because of altruism, and you remove the threat using whatever amount of force is required, well, there would be nothing that comes back to haunt you. We've done that with Japan. We did that with the Nazis. They haven't come back, have they? I mean, Japan is an ally of the West. Is among the most civilized places on this planet. The only thing that really annoys me is this kind of behavior of Trump. He doesn't realize that what he's done is exactly what is denied Netanyahu. He stopped Netanyahu from wiping out Hamas altogether, while he goes in and tries to destroy the dictatorship in Venezuela. I mean, this is exactly what it means. No going by principle. Not having your actions dictated by principle. Just go on an ad hoc basis according to what's pragmatic for the moment, what's suitable. I mean, a dictator or a regime which threatens you is removed. Full stop. but it's not like, in Gaza, all the poor Palestinians have to be protected. And, what about Venezuela? And look at this guy again, how he shows that he's on the pro-Palestinian side by appealing to, oh my God, people on the ground have been attacked. Even civilian died because of this strike. Well, the fact that civilians have died, might have died, doesn't negate the fact that a state, a civilized state, has got the right, moral right to attack a dictatorship. The fact that somebody on the ground that works for the dictatorship in the first place gets killed, well, that's what happens if you align yourself with the dictatorship. This trying to smirch a legitimate event just by appeal to, oh my God, a child might have died. Exactly what they've been doing for 2 years in Gaza. We have seen through that. They're so transparent right now, and they're so banal that it makes you weep, really.
Yeah, we didn't make it through the whole video. Unfortunately, we would have loved to watch the whole thing again, but you can find it online if you are afraid that you missed out on all the good parts of it. Nate says, if I'm right so much, you should reconsider the drugs argument. Actually, I'm thinking you're so wrong on the drugs argument that maybe I'm wrong about Megyn Kelly. But yeah, we will do a show about that. I think the case for legalizing cocaine, the YouTube algorithm will love that, I'm sure. And yeah, hopefully the channel will exist even after that. A channel that already exists, although there are no videos on it yet, is the Cultural Review. The first video, assuming we figure out all the details. It's been a while since we launched a new channel, but assuming we figure it out, the first video will premiere tomorrow, 10 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. Eastern. That's 2 p.m. Pacific. Can You Really Love Pluribus, the Apple TV show? Yes, I did check with Jonathan, made sure he's not going to sue me, author of Can You Really Love a Dog? Uh, Gave me approval to use that title. That show which we recorded last week with Luke Travers, Eyal Reichel, Alejandro, and myself will premiere all if everything goes well tomorrow. Make sure you subscribe to the new channel. Link is in the chat and in the description. And yeah, watch that video tomorrow. Some of us, I think, will be in the live chat, maybe all of us, to discuss whether or not people agree with our views on it. And yeah, much more coming soon on that channel. More positive stuff than Megyn Kelly and drugs and wars on that channel. So tune in. And yes, all that stuff still happens. So we will be back here tomorrow on the Daily Objective and the reality show. Jonathan, where can people find you?
People can find me on my blog at philosophyinedit.com. Link is in the description, hopefully.
Marco, Richard, where can people find you?
Check out the Briefly Objective, for which the link is in the description. Sister channel to this, lots of short form material from many of the conversations that have taken place in relation to the Israel-Gaza conflict.
I'm Razi Ginsburg on X, and also on another sister channel. It's a growing family, sister channel to this, The Cultural Review. Yeah, as I mentioned, tune in tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow we have 3 pieces of content going out. That's more than usual, but it'll be worth it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you.